I just want to make a quick video explaining why it seems like the country of India and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's BJP government absolutely dislikes Justin Trudeau and his Liberal government in Canada. You would be correct to detect that there's a lot of tension between India and Canada these days, and that Justin Trudeau is not particularly well liked every single time he touches down in India, whether it was for this recent G20 summit where Justin Trudeau conveniently was never featured in any of the videos of all the world leaders who showed up, or back when he showed up in 2018 in that ridiculous Indian costume. But it's not just because Justin Trudeau is deeply cringe and people don't like being around him. It's because Justin Trudeau has a very unseriousness when it comes to dealing with terrorism and extremism. The Indian government cannot stand Justin Trudeau's basically patting on the head of the radical Khalistani movement that has effectively made Canada its base of operations. If you don't know what the Khalistani movement is, it's effectively a bunch of radical Sikh separatists who want the northern region of India of Punjab to basically separate from India and start its own country. Really, it's just effectively a movement funded and supported by the Pakistani government to try and undermine India, as most Sikhs do not actually support the Khalistani movement. The vast majority of Sikhs in both Punjab and Canada do not like the Khalistani movement. It's just like the vast majority of Catholics do not support the IRA. It's not one of those things that the average person of those faiths actually supports. But for some reason, Justin Trudeau gives a lot of credence to the Khalistani movement. He does not condemn them. He does not have the police crack down on a lot of Khalistani violence that happens in Canada. And he does a lot of other things to effectively enable terrorism around the world, whether it's not cutting down on money laundering going on in Canada on behalf of the Iranian government or the Khalistani movement. He doesn't do any of this stuff. So Modi's government in India rightfully sees Justin Trudeau as a danger to the country, that he effectively allows enemies of the Indian government to make a base of operations out of Canada and basically try and make a mockery of the Indian government from abroad. I'm not sure if you saw this, but there was a parade float, I believe it was in Mississauga, where Khalistanis had basically reenacted the murder of former Indian Prime Minister Indira Gandhi back in the 1980s when her two Sikh Khalistani guards stabbed her to death because of anti-terrorism operations that the Indian government was taking part in Punjab region to sort of suppress this small minority of Khalistani separatists. But Justin Trudeau doesn't pretend like any of this stuff is weird, and he even allows people who are very sympathetic to the Khalistani movement into his party, and some of them have even served in parliament. Ramneesh Sangha, who is a Sikh himself, got in a lot of trouble in the party and was eventually thrown out and was made to sit as an independent because he tried to call out his own party, the Liberal Party, for effectively enabling the Khalistani threat. And it absolutely is a threat. The Khalistani movement blew up. Like the Khalistani terrorists blew up the Air India flight that had like over 230 Canadians on board. And it's one of those things that's just kind of not really considered too big of a deal by the Liberal government, and especially by NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, and who took about 3 attempts to actually be able to acknowledge that Khalistanis blew up that plane, because he's effectively a truther on that issue who thinks that somehow the Khalistani movement was being set up, or it's not really all that big of a deal. It's absolutely nuts. And anyone who pretends like the Khalistani movement is mainstream, and if you don't like it, you don't like Sikhs, those people themselves are insulting Sikhs. Again, it would be like accusing a Catholic or someone of being anti-Catholic because they don't support the IRA. The vast majority of Catholics do not support the IRA. The vast majority of the Protestants do not support the, I think it's UDR or whatever in Northern Ireland. Most people do not support domestic terrorist groups, and Sikhs do not support the Khalistani movement. The vast majority of them do not. They do not like it. I've talked to tons of Sikhs, and they hate it when liberal politicians pretend that this is a near and dear issue to their hearts. And the thing that really, really set off the Indian government in terms of what Justin Trudeau did was when he brought Jaswal Atwal on his trip back in 2018. The Indian government didn't really care about all the cringy, weird stuff Justin Trudeau was doing by dressing his family up in costumes for every single event he was going to, despite the fact that they were hoping that he was going to show up as a respectable Western leader. What they really hated was him bringing Jaswal Atwal, who literally is a Khalistani terrorist. I think he got acquitted on some charges, on some technicalities, but he literally tried to assassinate a Hindu politician in Canada who opposed the Khalistani movement. I think it was the then premier of British Columbia he tried to kill. It's nuts. And this guy was allowed to walk freely around India. And this is also why the Indian government basically bans people like Jagmeet Singh from showing back up into India. It's just like Israel banning people with Hamas sympathies from their country because it's not exactly good for the cohesion of the state of India or Israel to have basically terrorist sympathizers walking around giving credence to a violent movement. And the Khalistani movement is definitely violent. Although Khalistanis like to pretend that the Indian government became super anti-Sikh and that's why the Khalistani movement started, and there was some very anti-Sikh things that the Indian government did. There was anti-Sikh riots that happened in southern India that were disgusting. But all of this was part of the just ongoing violence that was being perpetrated by the Khalistanis and was sort of one of these responses that was not good, but it was a response to the fact that there was a lot of Khalistani terrorists going around stabbing Hindus to death in Punjab and also killing Sikhs who are not going to be supportive of the Khalistani movement, which is most of them, which is why even now there's a lot of reports that you'll see in Indian news of a Khalistani stabbing to death a Sikh military officer in the Indian government because they think it's an affront to their movement for Sikhs to be serving with the Indian government, even though the vast majority of Sikhs like the Indian government, because guess what? It's way better than Pakistan, who is not exactly a state known for its support of human rights. Again, there's problems in India, but the problems have never risen to the level of get onto a bus, stab people to death, and shoot random people who don't support your crazy separatist movement. But again, Justin Trudeau does not take this seriously and effectively belittles the Indian government for taking the issue of Khalistani terrorism seriously. So they just can't stand the guy. Justin Trudeau is effectively the worst ally on the planet because he enables countries like China and Iran, and Iran does crazy amounts of money laundering through Canada. He'll never crack down on it. He won't list the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, who's in charge of managing a lot of terror groups around the Middle East, never list them as a terror group in Canada to stop them from money laundering. But he will sort of make weird noises about how India is trying to interfere in Canadian elections. He doesn't care if China does it, but because maybe an Indian guy posted something once attacking Trudeau, suddenly now there's a big Indian interference problem in Canada. It's complete nonsense, and Justin Trudeau is only bringing stuff like that up now to pretend like it might be the Indian government's fault that he has a sour relationship with them, when it's really all his fault. And again, the Indian government never brought an anti-Canadian terrorist when they visited the country. He did it when he visited India, though. Anyways, that should be it for me today. I have a Give Send Go link in the description of this video for my ongoing defamation defense against a Chinese billionaire. I'm currently winning that. If you can pitch any money in it, really helps me out. And if you want to sign up for TNT emails, there's a link in the description. If you click on that and sign up, you can get these videos and any articles I write sent right to your inbox, so you can sort of move around Justin Trudeau's Bill C-18, preventing you from seeing news on popular social media sites like Google News and Facebook. Anyways, that should be it for me today, and I hope this video has been useful in understanding Justin Trudeau's hated status in India.